Yeah, let's
start the meeting.
all right.
And as usual, we'll start with 3 minutes of silent sitting.
Mm.
Welcome, even though our group is getting smaller. I think as soon as I am going to be, we are making the record and we'll be posting it as soon as I can get it figured out, which should be within a week.
Mm.
Okay, so let's go where we left off. Okay, just to remind us, this is the outline for section 4. And we're here in the middle of section F, at the end of the section articulating the extensive and great meaning, or articulating the vast meaning, Vipulya. And so we're right here. And that is section F. Acceptance of the real Dharma is the same as the Paramitas. And we've done Dana, Sila, and Kshanti. So here we are at Virya Paramita. Acceptance of the real Dharma, good sons and good daughters. Oh, by acceptance of the real Dharma. Now that's in brackets because, you recall, this is how the first section on the Dana Paramita started. The following sections for each Paramita just literally starts with those who are matured and leaves off the introductory phrase. By, beginning with by, the parenthetical phrase. So I have added, replaced that or added that to each section just so we can see the structure better. And we saw just 4 parts, and it's the second one that has the specific discussion of the Paramita, and the first, third, and fourth are all the same in terms of what they are talking about. By acceptance of the real Dharma, good sons and good daughters, those who are matured by the responsive use of vigor, those in the multitude of beings who do not let arise the lazy mind, who give birth to the mind of great desire, and who primarily forge ahead vigorously, will go as far as it seems to take throughout the 4 respective inspiring postures. As they go on protecting these intentions, they then mature. Those actually matured multitude of beings establish the real Dharma. And this is called crossing over by vigor. So again, I like the importance of this in terms of the conception of maturing in the Paramitas. And for vigor, this points out the do not let arise the lazy mind, give birth to a mind of great desire, and who primarily forge ahead vigorously, and doing that in all the 4 respect-inspiring postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Now, it's interesting to me, the give birth to the mind of great desire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Of course, we have that problem in Buddhism, where some people, especially in early Buddhism, was the question of sort of like desire, thirst was the second truth, that suffering comes from desire or thirst.
So can I have a question here?
Sure.
As you know, I follow you with the other book.
Right.
And sometimes it's very easy to follow,
Right.
Like here, I think the Waymans, instead of saying great desire, they say possessing great enterprise of striving. I assume
Right.
that's the same.
Well, I'm not sure if that, or they're changing desire to the one that says having great aspiration. Their sentence says, not having a torpid mind, not being lazy, having great aspiration, and possessing great enterprise of striving. So
That sounds like that desire to me, like they're using that word instead of desire.
Yeah. I think that the great enterprise of striving is what they have instead of what I have is forge ahead vigorously. And
Right,
they have
probably.
great desire. They have great aspiration where I have great desire, because I'm going again. I'm going from
Right, the other
Guna
translation.
Bradra. Let's see what.
So would it be like, as we have a reaction to the term desired as Tana, and it being not something that it's usually not used as a positive thing, but what is used as a positive thing is the striving for the bodhicitta cultivation and all that wish, the wish to be enlightened and enlighten other beings, the wish to help other beings and help oneself. Maybe it was a decision of not translating. What you're translating as desire, is that the main translation of the transcript with that word?
Yeah, for Guna Bradra. Let's see.
Yeah.
See if I can find it.
Yeah, I can settle with that, I can settle with desire, an appropriate desire, I mean, it's, after all, that's what we have.
It's going to come up again in a couple of paragraphs, the word as far as Guna Bradra is concerned.
Yeah.
It comes again, but this time it'll come in context as desire for the Dharma.
Right.
So that's the great desire they're talking about, is the desire for the Dharma.
Yeah, sure. That's how I see it too.
So one thing that's important, in fact, I was going to mention it later with another context, but I might as well say it here. Whenever we have the word great in a Mahayana or one vehicle sutra, it doesn't just mean big or large or, size.
Right.
It really has the multivariant, it means really important, or there's something really interesting about the word that's being defined by great. So we have great meaning, great desire, great resolutions. Right. And the term great there is really an indicator. The great vehicle, the one vehicle, the supreme vehicle, the Buddha vehicle are all synonyms. So we can say, in that sense, great desire is also that kind of meaning in this context, meaning the Buddha desire or the supreme desire or the great desire.
It makes me think of am I wrong, of the term bodhicitta?
No, it's similar. Bodhicitta is that initiation of the stirring of the mind of enlightenment, or sometimes it's called the thought of enlightenment.
I thought it was the thought of saving all beings, the desire to save all beings.
Well, bodhi is awakening, and chitta is mind, or the thoughts in the mind about awakening.
Okay, I'm wrong about it then. Okay.
Well, but I don't think necessarily wrong myself. I think that way, because bodhicitta and it really has to do with literally it's awakened mind, but literally bodhicitta too is the root of bodhisattva, and it arises, that thought of liberation for one and others. I mean, I know it might not be the exact translation,
Right.
but it's definitely implied what you're saying.
That's right. That's right, because it's the initiation of the bodhisattva path, which is never without the consideration of compassion.
Right.
So, so the mind of great desire is bodhicitta mind, because the great desire is the great desire for bodhi, and mind means chitta. So it is an interesting, it is an analog, if not a synonym, for the bodhicitta, the great desire mind, because the great desire is the desire for awakening. So, and
Okay, thank you.
and it's part of, you remember Hakuin had the like to emphasize great doubt, great perseverance, and
Great faith.
great faith. And so this mind of great desire is, here we are in Virya Paramita, so it is the great perseverance or the great determination, the great desire to understand how our faith and our doubt work together.
You know, Aitken translates it, which I never quite like that word, zeal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a frequent translation, and I don't quite like it either because it seems more superficial.
Yeah, and I relate it to zealot.
Zealot, right? Zealot, yeah.
Some fanatic or something.
Right. Okay, is that all I have on that point? Let's see if I can check my footnotes here. Yeah, no special footnotes on these. Okay, next one. Good sons, good daughters, those who are matured by the responsive use of meditation, dhyana, chan, zen. Those in the multitude of beings who by means of a non-disordered mind, a mind not turned toward externals, and primarily aligned recollection, go on as far as the long time that it takes to function and the long time that it takes to articulate to the very end. And they do not forget to neglect these. As they go on protecting those intentions, they then mature. Those actually matured multitude of beings establish the real Dharma, and this is called crossing over by meditation. So first off, you see that I'm using the word meditation. Some people are kind of weird, I think. Personally, they translate dhyana as trance. And that was an early translation.
Sounds like it, yeah.
In the 50s and 60s. But from the 70s on, it's mostly meditation.
All the way into the 60s. I thought you were saying even earlier, you know, early 20th century or something.
Oh yeah, even then, yeah.
I don't know. That's what I went when you said earlier.
Oh yeah, no, I think I've read it as trance all the way through some of the 60s. But it's not, there was a transition where people stopped using that and used meditation more. So what we have is the characteristics: a non-disordered mind, a mind not turned toward externals. And that is interesting because to me, this is the very early Buddhist concept of Asraya, Asrava, the outflows. And the Waymans, when it comes up later on, they will translate outflows as flux, F-L-U-X, which I always think is an odd translation.
Not in this paragraph, though, huh?
No, because this is more the literal meaning.
Yeah.
Of dhyana. Here, they say having an undisturbed mind not straying outside, and having no mistake of mindfulness.
Right.
So the straying of outside is what's called what I call the outflows. And I say it's very interesting because it's this way of not straying outside, or a mind not turned toward externals. It's really also, it's that sense of turning the light around,
right.
Not turned towards externals, turning the light around. But ultimately what that means is seeing through the duality of internal and external. So that when turning the light around, it's sort of like, where do you turn it around to? It's not really a place called the internal,
Right.
but
It's like seeing through the one who sees, as
right,
some,
exactly.
I was quoting that last week or the
Right.
week before, right?
Right. So look, there's Chris. Hi, Chris. The I'm glad to have you here, Chris, and I do recognize that you had the crossover time of meetings, earlier meetings, so it's good to have you here. Also, here's one of my unique translations in the middle of this. Primarily aligned recollection. Now, aligned recollection is my translation for Samyak Smrti. And that is the 7th of the Eightfold Path. And it's usually it's right mindfulness or correct mindfulness is the translation that you will usually see. What do they have? The Waymans have
No mistake of mindfulness.
no mistake of mindfulness. Now that's an interesting. I don't know where they got the
That's kind of clumsy.
no mistake of mindfulness as no mistake as their translation of Samyak, which is usually the right mindfulness. So they have no mistake of mindfulness. The I've got a probably as usual an over wordy. I actually wrote a whole paragraph in my notes, not the notes here, but in my dictionary notes, about why I use the word aligned for Samyak. And just to briefly say it, it means Sam means the same, and Samyak means to be oriented in the same manner. So that's how I get to aligned. And it refers to like when you have a bunch of troops, soldiers, marching together as they do in rows and columns, and they're all marching together. That's Samyak, aligned. So I don't know, the idea of they jump from that to right or correct because the alignment is the goal. And so when you get aligned, then now you are in the right formation, the correct formation. So that's how they get the meaning of Samyak to be right or correct.
And what would be the Smrti is.
Yeah. So So and the reason I like just the other reason I wanted to say about why I like the aligned is because the Eightfold Path uses this word Samyak at the beginning of each of the Eight Folds, but it's referring to that's the fourth noble truth. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering, the truth of Dukkha, and we remember that Dukkha literally means the unbalanced hub or the off-center hub, and so the image that's created is that you're riding in a cart with an unbalanced axle, and you're going bub 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 as you drive down a smooth road because it's the axle that's off center. The axle is unbalanced. The wheel is unbalanced, and so that's why I like to go when you get to the Eightfold Path. It's everything gets aligned, and that's how we the idea of getting rid of the dukkha, the unbalanced aspect of our relationship to life, because now we are aligned in our relationship to life. And it's not just a matter of being right or wrong or correct or incorrect. It's a matter of being aligned in these 8 aspects of life. And this one is smrti. Now, smrti literally means recollection or remembrance. But it also has the connotation, just like it does in English, of mindfulness, being mindful, to pay attention, to be attentive. But I like to go in as is my wont with the more
I don't know if you see the.
basic. I think there's.
Yeah.
I think Aiken sometimes acknowledged recollection, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and with this kanji, which it was from a post, I don't know if my camera is working. Yeah, it should be.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. So the
Let us see it. I can't see it.
Oh, sorry.
Who?
stop there. Hold it right there. So-
Wait, it's not focusing on Danielle.
No, he's holding up the kanji for smrti.
Oh, there, I see it now. Okay.
Yeah. Which
All
is,
right.
and actually, that I've got the bottom part of the kanji is the same as this, the mind.
Right. Mind. Right.
Which just reminds me that I forgot to put my rakusu on. So,
So
so
see the
that's why
kanji
I like to use
little-
this aligned recollection to make us think about the concept, because people just jump over when they say right mindfulness. I think they just kind of jump over the whole idea of how deep this idea is, because it includes it's really practice. It's the recollection that in every moment we recollect what our practice is and what our path is, and so that's why I like you could say, well, mindfulness means the same thing. In every moment we're going to be mindful of, but it's not so much to me mindful of objects in the world, like to be mindful of the orange we're eating or something like that. To me, it's to be it's the recollection of our practice,
Right.
which may include, focusing on the orange and then busting through the outflow sensation of the orange. But
I once heard the story of Thich Nhat Hanh being in Montreal, and the license plates of the state of Quebec, the province of Quebec, the motto of the province says "Je me souviens," which in French means "I remember, I recollect." And that Thich Nhat Hanh says, "Oh, whoa, the state of Quebec, mindfulness is the motto,
Right. Oh, that's clever. That's good.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll put a footnote in the for that. Okay, next one is the sixth paramita. By acceptance of the real Dharma, good sons and good daughters are those who are matured by the responsive use of wisdom, jnana prajna. Again, obviously, those are the various multitudes of beings who question every meaning by using a fearless mind, and then by expounding and articulating every discourse and every technique to completely fathom the fields of learning, as far as every kind of technique for the various matters, will go on protecting those intentions and then mature. Those actually matured multitude of beings establish the real Dharma, and this is called crossing over by intuitive knowing. And you see at the beginning, I translate jnana prajna as wisdom, and we discussed this earlier, why jnana means to know or knowledge, and prajna, I am here translating it as intuitive knowing. But when they are both together, you've got the knowing and knowledge, and you've got the intuitive knowing, and so that's together. Jnana prajna is the full wisdom. So it's interesting here. It starts off with those who are matured by the responsive use of wisdom, and so what it's saying is that jhana is part of the prajna paramita. And that may be, that's part of, I would say, it's a one vehicle view of the prajna paramitas. It's saying, don't focus just on the prajna aspect, although that's very important. It is the jhana prajna, which is the full maturity of the prajna paramita. Those are the various multitudes of beings. The question every meaning. Isn't that interesting? It says that prajna paramita begins with our questioning of the meanings of things, of what's being taught, what's being said, the meaning of what we perceive, what we, basically every meaning. And in that sense, it goes with the sort of the bookend of paramartha, which means ultimate or primary meaning. Ultimate, if we look at it in the sense of going to the end, or primary, if we look at the sense of going to the bottom of the root, the source. The primary meaning, or the ultimate meaning, is where we end up when we question every meaning. And to do that, we do have to have a fearless mind to question the meaning of things. And I think that's fascinating to me, when we don't talk about this much in Buddhism, about questioning the meanings of things. Although in my mind, that's really how we find the path, or how we get oriented to the path, is we have the question. And of course, the question, questioning every meaning could also be called the koan method or path, just to the path of inquiry. But we do have to have a fearless mind to do that, and that's part of the Bodhisattva.
Mike just posted in the comments, great doubt, and I was thinking that too.
Right, the great doubt is the
questioning mind.
Yeah, it's the framing part. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, this also, I think, this is maybe a little bit of my own trip, but, and I've been working with people in Dokusan quite a bit about questioning, first seeing, I think I mentioned this yesterday, seeing the way that we use vocabulary to talk about our processes and to talk about ourselves, and how we set up limitations. We set up, you know, it's like we become what we say we are, you know, kind of thing, so to speak. And how that itself is a huge obstacle. And if we just start paying attention of how, well, you know, I am such and such a person, and I don't like this and I don't like that. And I carry it with myself without even knowing that I am such and such a person, that I approve of this and don't approve of that. And I get a little bit of a kick when I get a chance for people to see how they are expressing themselves at that moment and this moment, you know, and says, you see that is an obstacle that you're creating out of the blue. So in a way, it's, well, of course, it's re-examining, or first knowing how it is that we see ourselves, and then examining when it's just mumbled out as a matter of fact. As today is Thursday, and we have Srimala class, you know, because today is Thursday, we have the Green Srimala class. I am, you know, I'm a Zen teacher, and I practice blah, 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 and I really like this, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So then, now this is interesting to me, the next transition. Questioning the meaning with fearless mind, then by expounding and articulating every discourse, Shastra. So that is talking about studying the treatises and discourses and expounding and articulating what we have studied. I think that's very important, that prajna is not just a passive thing or something that happens to us in terms of having the insight. Prajna doesn't become real until we share it with others in terms of expounding and articulating.
Looks like
Gregory,
Chris has his hands up.
Are you seeing hands up, Gregory?
What?
Chris has his hand up. I'm not
Oh,
sure if you
No,
can see.
I was looking at the page. What's Chris?
Thanks. Thanks, folks. I just wanted to ask, please, I wonder if there's anything you might say about this fearless mind as you've translated it.
Right. Well, it's one of, there's, I'm not sure where we get to, fearlessness is a bodhisattva attribute. And there's even a list of like the 4 kinds of fearlessness. But the fearlessness to me is a mind which penetrates the duality, because our fears are about like not being good enough, not being smart enough, not being strong enough. And we are able to question the meaning of things if we can get to that fearless mind that isn't intimidated by a teacher, that isn't intimidated by being, what do they call it, the consensus opinion of things in the world. So it does take us being fearless to question the conventional realities and the conventional wisdoms of society. And sometimes they even call that, there was this story about Buddha saying, if I throw the bowl in the river and if it floats upstream, then enlightenment, awakening will be in the cards for me. And so that is, to me, that sense of going against the flow of normal conventional society and ideas of conventional reality does take a fearlessness. And so that's how I see that.
I'd like to add something. So much of the things that I see in my week have to do with my conversation with students, what I see of myself and us as human beings. Talking to somebody this morning, and I've noticed that her practice has really gotten a big shake for during the pandemia, and she was saying how sometimes she gets so lost and scared and uncomfortable, and that it must, at the same time, that she knows she's in the right place, but sometimes she feels like it can't be that disturbing and that destructive in a certain way, that she feels like certain memories are coming up, certain things that she hadn't thought about it for a long time, certain things that she hasn't felt about it for a long time, they're coming in. And she wonders if there's anything wrong about that, And it was like, says, well, that's what happens, I mean, the practice shakes us up sometimes. And the reality of what we've been experiencing this last year shakes us up completely, all of us, one way or the other. We have been shaken. And there's no mistake there. It's my life. It's just my life, so nothing is entering. So I think that I find as a courageous mind, or what was the term that were used there?
Fearless.
Fearless. Right. Can I just take responsibility? After all, it's my mind, it's my feelings, it's my reactions, So,
Right.
and I think it takes courage, and it takes that confidence that we've been talking on about during this time of pandemia.
Yeah.
There's another thing too for me about this fearless mind is that when the mind penetrates through the surface stuff, we are always going to be confronting the great matter of life and death. And most of the time, I don't want to. You know, it's more comfortable to stay on the surface than to
Sure.
than to realize that we're really not standing on solid ground. And I think that it demands a fearlessness or courageousness,
Yeah, absolutely.
our practice to persevere with that.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that fearless, like courage, sometimes they say courage is not being without fear. It means going forward with the fear. And a fearless mind is also not necessarily a mind untouched by fear, but a mind that has composted, digested, dealt with, worked with fear, and seen through.
Posting it or working with it at that moment, too.
Right, right.
Yeah, and just really, you get down to it, you're in a state of not knowing, for unknowing, and continuing on anyway.
Right.
Fearlessness or the courageousness.
So then we have an almost impossible goal here, which is using this fearless mind, we go on expounding and articulating all the discourses and every technique to completely fathom the fields of learning. Of course, here the fields of learning relates to the three types of learning in Buddhism, sila, dhyana, and prajna. And so, we're talking about every technique to completely fathom these fields. And every technique for the various matters. Of course, we have the great matter and we have the various matters. And so part of prajna is how to apply the what we've learned about the great matter to the various matters. Again, that's the idea of the absolute or emptiness and our suchness, and then to the yatha bhutam, that which is the reality of thusness, or just this, the various matters. So I like that, and this is called, in my translation, crossing over by intuitive knowing. The reason I think I mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. Pra means before, and jna, J-N-A, means to know or knowing. So it literally, prajna means before knowing. And so that's why I and Suzuki Roshi, not Suzuki Roshi, D.T. Suzuki, it was the one who I first saw use this word intuitive, connected to prajna. And then when I looked up the meaning of pra as the before knowing, I saw that explained to me why he used the word intuitive. Now, a lot of people, they don't, when they hear the word intuitive or intuition, they have a wholly different context for it. But to me, the intuitive knowing is very, as described by D.T. Suzuki, is also very similar to the intuition function that Carl Jung talked about. So I'm very comfortable, and I like using this word intuitive knowing for prajna to again, pop us out of any kind of complacency about thinking about the word.
Or just keeping it as wisdom, which is not a bad word, but also wisdom doesn't quite do it. You know, it is. I think that wisdom doesn't have the cutting edge of prajna.
Right.
I
Well, that's why up at the beginning, I use the word wisdom for when jhana and prajna are combined.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas the intuition, the intuitive knowing is that cutting edge. And so after going through the 6 paramitas, we then have, for this reason, world-honored one, there are no different cross paramitas, no different crossings over, and no different acceptance of the real Dharma. Acceptance of the real Dharma exactly is crossing over, or exactly is the paramitas. So again, here we have, the non-dual aspect of restating the identity of the acceptance of the real Dharma and the 6 paramitas. Now, this whole section, I said, to me, is really aimed at the people who were in the Bodhisattva vehicle and focused primarily on the 6 paramitas. And it's saying this is a foundational practice for maturing in the acceptance of the real Dharma. And as we'll find out later in the next chapter, acceptance of the real Dharma is really talking about the one vehicle, coursing in the one vehicle. So now we go to articulating the great meaning. And here, I've given this just a heading, articulating the great meaning. Wayman's also gave it a heading at this point.
Teaching the great meaning.
Teaching the great meaning. The reason is because it has this initial statement where Srimala says, "World-honored one, as I now receive the Buddha's awe-inspiring spirit, may I then articulate the great meaning." So this is one of the several ways that the sutra indicates a section or a subsection or a transition comment. So we know that some kind of a content or topic subheading does seem appropriate here. And so I put this in because it comes from, may I then articulate the great meaning. And as she says, her articulation is inspired by the Buddha's spirit. The Buddha declared, then articulate it. I like the simpleness of that. May I articulate the great meaning, then articulate it. So then we have a breakdown of several items. Renunciation, Dharma friendship, and great strength. Acceptance of the real Dharma as renunciation of body, life, and riches. Now we saw before the renunciation of the body, and now it's expanded to body, life, and riches. And we've talked about before here, life means the lifespan or one's destiny. Srimala addressed the Buddha, by acceptance of the real Dharma, those who accept the real Dharma are no different from acceptance of the real Dharma. Now again here, this is a statement of we had this earlier, it's sort of, this is again a reprise or a restatement of this identity of that the person who accepts the real Dharma, you and me, by acceptance of the real Dharma is no different from acceptance of the real Dharma. There's no duality there. Those who are no different from acceptance of the real Dharma are the good sons and good daughters who accept the real Dharma, and exactly are the acceptance of the real Dharma. So we've just had this, it's layered and repeated. And again, this shows that when she's using the term good sons and good daughters, or let's say when this sutra uses the term good sons and good daughters, it means the people of the all four of the fourfold assembly, the male and female monastics and the male and female lay people, are all the good sons and good daughters. It's not just the monastics or just the lay people, because it's anybody who accepts the real Dharma is exactly acceptance of the real Dharma, and they are the good sons and good daughters who accept it. Because why? If there are good sons and good daughters who accept the real Dharma, for acceptance of the real Dharma, they renounce the three kinds of allotments. What are the classes that serve as the three? They are designated body, life, and riches. So here we have the three kinds of allotments. They're called allotments because it's what we are allotted due to our karmic causes and conditions. You know, we may be allotted a nice body, or a twisted body, a crippled body, or a strong body, or a weak body. We may be allotted a short life, a very short life, a very long life. We don't know. And we may be allotted riches and wealth. But the point is, these are things that are given to us, are the three kinds of allotment that come from our karma causes and conditions. And the three, body, life, and riches, are the variant way of saying that we say in English, I, me, and mine. So we have this idea, I don't know if you've heard it, I've heard it, where, you know, giving up the I, me, mine is or being unattached to the I, me, mine is an important aspect of Buddhist practice. And that's what is being talked about here, is to renounce the attachments to these kinds of, to these three aspects of what our life is, what our being is. So yeah, so allotted is the results of the karmic fruits ripening in this life. And we don't know what those are going to be, but they are what they are. Interesting, the Waymans call them three accessories.
Yeah.
The three accessories for the sake of making persons embrace the illustrious doctrine. The three are body, life force, and possessions. So I think three accessories, I got a chuckle out of that as well. So I don't see it as.
Yeah, and life force. What is it that you are doing with that?
I call it the lifespan, in the sense of it's the idea that we have a life force, a chi, and it pushes us forward to, and then it's like the arrow shot in the air. It goes up and then it comes down. So
somehow life force. It doesn't sound good to me the way the Waymans use that term life force, because life force has nothing to do with the way it has nothing to do with an accessory that gets allotted to me. It's just I'm alive,
right.
No matter what accessory, I'm alive.
Right. Mm. Yeah. To me, the life force is a way of talking about it's this idea that you shoot the arrow in the air and it goes up and has an arc and then it loses its force and comes down. And that's the image of life force. But rather than talking about it in terms of the force of the arrow, I like the lifespan or one's destiny in that sense.
Yeah,
meaning
like
how high it goes and how far it goes, and we don't know. The force is released at our birth. From this perspective, being the karmic fruits that are allotted to us. So That's why I prefer lifespan or life, just life or lifespan. So then it goes to the three. It has a comment about each of the three. Of the good sons and good daughters, those who renounce the body are equal to the last boundary of birth and death, samsara, are separate from old age, decay, and death, and attain the Tathagata's Dharma body of virtuous merit that is indestructible, always abiding, without having transformations and unable to be conceptualized. Now this is interesting. To renounce, we're getting into something that is at this point not spelled out, but is the context for what's being discussed here, and that is the 10 Bodhisattva stages. As we just talked about the 6 Paramitas of the Bodhisattva, now we're leaning into concepts related to the 10 Bodhisattva stages. The last boundary of birth and death, samsara, it's also called the ultimate limit of samsara, is part of the where are we here? It's what comes with the the 7th stage, the 7th Bodhisattva stage.
Where do these Bodhisattva stages come from?
They come from several sutras. The
Okay.
Brahmanet Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, and others. There's
Because we don't talk about them in Zen that I'm familiar
not
with.
very much,
No.
Okay.
and it's because of I was just gonna remark on that. The reason we don't talk about them a whole bunch in Zen is actually written up in the let's see, in the Lankavatara Sutra. DT Suzuki. Oh, that's not good. Let me see here.
That's okay. I'm causing you to diverge from your point.
Oh, that's right. No, I wanted to say it. I thought I had it teed up. But we're going to come back to this question of the 10 stages being the backdrop or the context a lot. Okay, here it goes. The Lankavatara, this is from D.T. Suzuki's translation. The 10th is the first is the 8th, the 9th is the 7th, and the 7th is the 8th. And the 2nd is the 3rd, and the 4th is the 5th, and the 3rd is the 6th. What gradation is there where imagelessness prevails? So that's the, of course, that was the Lankavatara is a one vehicle sutra, but it's also the one that Bodhisattva focused on. And so I think that is really how the one vehicle approaches this whole idea of the stages, is that they're there, but don't think of them as too ordered. Maybe it's best to just see them that any stage can be in the place of any other stage. And the 2nd is the 3rd, and the 4th is the 5th, and the 3rd is the 6th. So what gradation is there? They're not like lined up as first one, first the other, because that's the way they're always talked about in the Bodhisattva vehicle, and the emphasis of the Bodhisattva going through stages. And the one vehicle always sort of recognizes the stages but doesn't enshrine them. And I think that's exactly why this doesn't spell out the stages. But what I'm pointing out is how these are terms that refer to the stages. And this term, the last boundary of birth and death, the utmost limit of samsara, is the entry to nirvana. And that is the seventh Bodhisattva stage. And we're going to come up again in the later chapters. There's going to be a longer discussion about this idea of nirvana with remainder or nirvana without remainder. And the seventh stage is the nirvana with remainder, and the 10th stage is the nirvana that ultimately is the nirvana of the Tathagata without remainder. So we're going to get into that, but I'm just trying at this point pointing out that what we're talking about here is the context of these Bodhisattva stages. And the stages, again, are just to highlight aspects, not to,
Well, remember that koan, Gregory, a monk asked, the one I'm not reading our translation, I'm reading that this thing from Thomas Cleary. What work does not fall into stages?
Right.
You know, and the teacher says, I don't even practice. Well, here it says, even the holy truths are not practiced.
Right. The Four Noble
The
Truths.
noble truths are not practiced.
Right.
What koan is that?
It's I don't know where it's from. I mean, it's part of our koan that we use, but here I'm getting it from Timeless Spring, and it has even the Japanese name. So Gyoshi of Seigen says, what work does not fall, a monk asked Gyoshi of Seigen, what work does not fall into stages?
Right.
What I think we have it, which one doesn't fall into numbers or something like that, you know?
Right.
And then in our translation, it says something like, I even don't practice the Four Noble Truths or something like that.
Right.
Even the holy truths are not practiced. So it's that thing typical of Zen that Gregory's saying, you know, it's like, sure, all these things, and then at the same time, they get turned around, and so we don't get too hooked on them.
Right.
I mean, that's what I have learned. That's the way
This next, attaining the Tathagata's Dharma body is the 8th stage of the Bodhisattva stages. So the last boundary of birth and death is the 7th, and attaining the Dharma body is the 8th. And so what I'm pointing out is that in renouncing the body, we get to the 7th and 8th stages after we've just gone through in the previous section the 6 paramitas. And because each of the 10 stages is associated with a paramita. And so the 7th stage is associated with Upaya paramita, and the 8th stage is associated with the Pranidhana paramita, which is the resolution, the vow, or the aspiration. The paramita of the vow, or as I've translated it, resolution. And then the
Bala?
9th is the Bala paramita, strength and power. And then the 10th is jhana, knowing and knowledge, which implies the Buddha knowing and knowledge, not worldly. So I'm pointing that out just as a background to know that what's being talked about here is that at the 8th stage, we renounce the body. At the 9th stage, we renounce life, the lifespan. And at the 10th stage, we renounce possessions. And what it's called is, the 8th stage of renouncing the body is called manifesting the jewel of the Buddha. And that's why it's called the attainment of the Dharma body, the Tathagata's Dharma body, because in the 8th stage, the paramita of vow is when we get to the jewel of the Buddha, of the 3 jewels, the jewel of the Buddha. In the 9th stage, renouncing our life, our lifespan, that is the manifestation or realization of the jewel of the Dharma. And then at the 10th stage, renouncing all of our possessions, our wealth, our riches, that is the jewel of the Sangha, and it's also called the state of autonomy. We'll get there. So I just trying to look ahead at what we got here is 3 renunciations, and there's associated with each renunciation, after the 6 paramitas, these are the 7th and 8th, 9th, and 10th stages. So we have in this section the outline of the Bodhisattva. So the second one here is those who renounce life are equal to the last so again, those who renounce life are equal to the last boundary of birth and death. Remember, birth and death is the translation for samsara that the Chinese use. Samsara means basically the rounds of the wheel of life, and so they translate it as birth and death. In the end, after all, are separate from death and attain the virtuous merit that is endless, always abiding, unable to be conceptualized, that freely penetrates every extremely profound Buddha Dharma. And so here we see that this is why this stage is called manifesting or realizing the jewel of the Dharma, because it's able to freely penetrate every profound Buddha Dharma. And this whole concept, extremely profound Buddha Dharma, is sort of like inside baseball. The Buddha Dharmas in the emptiness teachings, all dharmas are empty. And what that means is all conventional dharmas, all dharmas in the realm of conditioned reality, all are empty. But in the one vehicle, in the Mahayana of suchness, once awakening is achieved, all dharmas are Buddha dharmas. They're not just dharmas of conventional reality. They're not just dharmas of cause and condition. They are the dharmas of suchness and the Buddha. And so they are every extremely profound Buddha dharma. This is something that is very subtle and often overlooked, and it becomes an argument, but we'll get to it later on in a very important passage. It becomes this argument over the question of self-emptiness and other emptiness. Right. But here, the other emptiness is indicated because the dharmas are empty of self, but they're not empty of awakening. And so all dharmas become extremely profound in Buddha Dharma.
That's fairly sticky, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In a way, because at the same time, we say, and the texts often mention delusion and enlightenment or awakening are the same, and so it's like delusion, and we also take delusion as part of the reification process, maybe, you know. That's why it's eluded. But and then enlightenment is the non-reification. There's nothing to reify. It's just vastness. And if they're the same, vast emptiness and form, they're exactly the same. And so it is, that's sticky when you say then there's suchness, and then suchness is forever, if you will. I mean, that's what you're saying in a way, isn't it?
Well, no,
The other emptiness
partly,
that is not part of.
Partly, but not exactly. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is that when we're just in the realm of form, we see dharmas as things, as reified things.
Right.
When we get to the question, when we get to the stage of emptiness, and then we get to the next level of emptiness is form, form is emptiness. Then we get to the level of emptiness is emptiness and form is form. Again, in that three-stage aspect. That's when we say that the Buddha Dharma and the Buddha Dharmas, every extremely profound Buddha Dharma, every single Dharma is a Buddha Dharma. And that's the stage of emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness. And the point being, when you just say dharmas are empty, it sort of drains them out of the fact that they are the manifestation of awakening per se. So that's the point I think that's being made here when it talks about freely penetrates every extremely profound Buddha Dharma.
But it drains it, but doesn't it drain, isn't it, Gregory, like the idea of to soften Nagarjuna's statements of emptiness, the Yogacara movement was created. So or the Samdhanimochana Sutra is to again make the mountains mountains and the rivers are rivers. But
right, but they are preaching the Dharma. They are not just things inert there.
Right. It's an awakened. It's an awake from the awakened experience.
Right.
It comes from the awakened experience, and first the mountains are mountains, rivers and rivers. It's just on the ordinary, non-awakened place.
Yes.
Can I ask a question here, please? If we're grappling with the harshness of emptiness, and there is a response to that, which is suchness. Suchness isn't empty. Suchness is the Dharma, it's the Buddha Dharma that is everywhere, penetrating all things. My brother dropped a pen. That was the Buddha Dharma, preaching the Dharma. Am I making any sense? Did I?
No, yeah, I think it makes sense, Carol. But that's kind of yeah. No, it's
It has to reverberate between the two, because to keep us free of falling into one-sidedness.
exactly right. That's it. That's all it is, you know. So all of this, it's like we mentioned a few weeks ago. It's all upaya. It's all upaya. It's all upaya.
That's why it says it's always abiding, but it's also unable to be conceptualized. Well, isn't that a contradiction? Always
Right.
abiding is a concept, but then it's unable to be conceptualized, and it freely penetrates even the extremely profound Buddha Dharma. So it's trying to point at all the different
Right. Yeah.
at the same time.
That's good. That's good.
those who renounce riches, and again here riches, sometimes I've seen it translated as possessions. Also, I've seen it translated as assets or wealth. Interestingly, I just came across that this is the same definition of the word mammon, where it says in the Bible, it says you can't follow both God and mammon. You have to, one or the other. So it's very fascinating because it's the same teaching of renouncing riches is the same teaching of renouncing mammon.
How do you spell that word, mammon?
Mammon, M-A-M-M-O-N.
Mammon. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my ignorance of the Bible is immense.
Yeah. It is.
The stuff that falls from heaven.
No, that's manna.
Manna.
That's manna.
Sorry.
Mammon is this false god of wealth and, the golden calf and that.
Yeah.
Contemporary translations will say you can't love both God and money.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I think is the problem with that is it's not just money. Like having 5 cents in my pocket and buying a stick of gum or buying some incense is not what's being talked about. It's talking about amassing money. So that's why I don't like the translation money just by itself. I like the translation riches and wealth, because it's talking about getting on the treadmill to live for money and amass wealth and riches as a substitute for living a good life. But so here it is here, those who renounce. And again, you notice that each one is equal to the last boundary of birth and death. So that it's saying that all 3 types of renunciation are equal to nirvana and attain what is not shared by all the multitude of beings. The virtuous merit that is inexhaustible, undiminished, in the end, after all, always abiding, unable to be conceptualized, and fully endowed. And they attain the rare makings of offerings of all the multitude of beings. So again, here we have to break it down into, you have these common themes in all 3, unable to be conceptualized, always abiding. So what comes from the renunciation of these things is always abiding, unable to be conceptualized. But the point being, we always think of these renunciations as some kinds of deprivation or giving up, or we're not going to have anything going on afterwards. But something is always abiding there that is unable to be conceptualized. And that's what the renunciations are pointing to, for us to have that full living experience of that which is, in the end, after all, always abiding, unable to be conceptualized. And then it says, and fully endowed. So this is the interesting thing. It says, if you give up your riches, you will be fully endowed. So endowment, if in material sense, being endowed is having riches. So in a way, it's saying, if you give up the riches, the material riches, you will have, well, what we sometimes call the spiritual riches, or you will be endowed with the riches of awakening, or the riches of wisdom and compassion. And you will then attain the rare making of offerings of all the multitude of beings. And this making of offerings of all multitudes of beings, I've left it in a somewhat ambiguous translation. Let's see. The Waymans have merits that are unshared with other sentient beings, being honored by all sentient beings. So they, instead of saying making offerings of all sentient beings, they say honored by all sentient beings. I've left it a little more ambiguous because to me, it goes in both directions. It's you're now at the level of being a Buddha, and all the multitude of beings will honor you, because this again is a reference to the 10th stage Bodhisattva, who becomes who manifests the jewel of the Sangha and is called now a king of Dharma. And so because of that, the making of offerings of all the multitudes of beings are given to the person who has fully renounced in this manner. But also it's sort of, I like the ambiguity that it means that a Buddha actually is making offerings to all the multitude of beings, the offerings of the Dharma and such not. So it's now what the fully endowed with the Dharma, these bodhisattvas of the 10th stage are now able to give these offerings completely and fully to all the multitude of beings, as well as having the multitude of beings make offerings to the bodhisattva. Just looking to see if I have any more notes on this part. Just again, that what we have here is these three renunciations are indications of the manifestation of the jewel of the Buddha, the jewel of the Dharma, and the jewel of the Sangha. The three treasures are what's being talked about here, without the specific label, but it does have the reference here to the Sangha, the multitude of beings, the Dharma, the profound Buddha Dharma, and then the jewel of the Buddha in the terms of the Tathagata's Dharma body. So that's how we know that each of these are talking about those three stages.
Gregory, could you, in the Wayman deal, is it in page 76? Or is it still?
Yeah, we're at the top of page 76.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Now we're at the part, world honored one. So it is by renouncing the three allotments, good sons and good daughters accept the real Dharma and always serve as that sign of all the various Buddhas wherein all the multitudes of beings are revered. So again, it's another form of her again, the non-dual view that these things are all connected. They renouncing these three renunciations are the acceptance of the real Dharma. Always serves that sign of all the various Buddhas where all the multitude of beings are revered. So now we can do another transition. And here we go. So up to the Paramitas, the articulation of the vast meaning was these articulations that basically were about using metaphors and things about the real Dharma as a cloud, the earth, jewels of the earth support the earth, the cloud, and the waters. So it's more like what I would call the ontological aspects, although I don't usually use that word very much, of the real Dharma. And again, and then ending with it going through the Paramitas. But here with the great meaning, now we've transitioned to basically more practice. So it starts off with the practice of renunciation. Now it goes into this very fun little section called Acceptance of the Real Dharma as Dharma Friendship. World honored one, furthermore, when the desire for the Dharma, there's that word desire again, desire for the Dharma is extinguishing, and factions of monks, nuns, layman disciples, and laywomen disciples dispute, break up, separate, and scatter. those good sons and good daughters who accept the real Dharma use non-flattering, not deceiving, non-misrepresenting, and the joy of love for the real Dharma, to accept the real Dharma and enter into the midst of Dharma friendship. Those who enter Dharma friendship certainly are conferred the sign by the various Buddhas. So this isn't that fascinating? It's dealing directly with this idea of the breakup of the Dharma in the Dharma ending age sort of idea. But and it makes it very concrete that when the desire for the Dharma is extinction, then factions develop, and people will argue and dispute, and they'll break up, they'll schism and separate and scatter. But those who are accepting the real Dharma, and we know these are our precepts, not using not flattering language, using not deceiving language, using not misrepresenting language, and using the joy of love for the real Dharma, to accept the real Dharma and enter into the midst of Dharma friendship. So that's what we're doing here, is entering into the midst of Dharma friendship. And in just being able to enter into Dharma friendship, this perspective of the one vehicle says this is, those who do this, those who enter Dharma friendship are basically on the track to be conferred the sign of future Buddhahood, meaning they are at least at the 7th stage of non-regression, no backsliding. The 7th stage is no retrogression, no backsliding. And so this is another little thing of saying it. When we enter into Dharma friendship of the real Dharma, we won't backslide, and we will eventually get a sign of our future Buddhahood. Next is the last image that Srimala presents. World-honored one, I see that acceptance of the real Dharma thus is great strength. The Buddha serves, again, here we have that word great. It's not just regular strength, it's the great strength with all that connotation. The Buddha serves as the true eye, the true knowledge, serves as the root of the Dharma, serves as the freely penetrating Dharma, serves as the refuge of the real Dharma, and even is all-knowing and seeing. So here we have this great strength. We have the true eye and true knowledge. Now I want to go back. We've seen this before, and I like to emphasize it every time it comes up. In the Lotus Sutra, it talks about the Buddha coming to the world, and I'm going to just read it here. Shariputra, why is it said, this is my translation of the Lotus Sutra. Shariputra, why is it said that the various Buddha world-honored ones therefore come forth to manifest in the world only by means of the causes and conditions of the one great matter? And the answer that Buddha gives is, because the various Buddhas and world-honored ones desire to let the multitude of beings hear of the Buddha's knowing and seeing, to be able to purify the afflictions. They come forth to manifest in the world because they desire to show the multitude of beings the knowing and seeing of the Buddhas. They come forth to manifest in the world because they desire to let the multitude of beings awaken to the Buddha's knowing and seeing. They come forth to manifest in the world. And because they desire to let the multitude of beings enter the way of the Buddha's knowing and seeing, they come forth to manifest in the world. So each of these 4 categories of desire to let the beings hear of the knowing and seeing, desire to show the multitude of beings the knowing and seeing, the desire to let the multitude of beings awaken to the Buddha's knowing and seeing, and the desire to let the multitude of beings enter the way of the Buddha's knowing and seeing. So this, in the Lotus Sutra, is the declaration of why Buddhas come to the world only for this one great matter. And that's what's going on here. Whenever we see this, the Buddha serves as the true eye and true knowledge. They are referring again to this Buddha's seeing and the Buddha's knowing. Serves as, go ahead.
Could I interject here just a moment about how closely akin this seems to me to the Christian doctrine of why the Christ manifests in the body in the world?
Yeah, I think it's analogous. I'm always there to look at the analogous aspects of Christianity and Buddhism, and I think that's one of them that can be pointed out. Yeah. So the Buddha serves as the true eye and true knowledge, serves as the root of the Dharma, and that's a way of saying that the jewel of the Dharma springs from the root, of the jewel of the Buddha. The Buddha jewel is the root of the Dharma jewel, in the way that the leaves of the tree come from the root. Serves as the freely penetrating Dharma. The Buddha is not separate from the Dharma, and the Buddha is himself the freely penetrating Dharma. That's where we get into the manifestation of Buddha as not a separate personality, but as the awakening of our own being. Serves as the refuge of the real Dharma. This comes up later when we talk about the thing about the difference between the early Buddhism and the Mahayana Ekayana is that in early Buddhism, the primary refuge was the refuge in the Dharma, because they saw the Buddha as the living being who died and left the world and left for the world the Dharma. And so it's take refuge in the Dharma. But when you get back to the Mahayana, it's saying the Buddha is not the physical form body. The Buddha is the Dharma body. And so taking refuge in the Dharma is really taking refuge in the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata, which means taking refuge in the Buddha, or in awakening. And even is all knowing and all seeing. And so that's the Buddha version. All knowing and all knowing and seeing is the Buddha version of omniscience. God is omniscient, but it's in the context of sometimes there's a Zen saying that even the Buddha can't count the hairs on the back of his head. So
Hey, Gregory, I got lost now in Wayman's book.
right.
This is where you compiled it a little bit different.
This is in the bottom of 76.
Oh, we're still there.
Lord, I suppose the embrace of the real Dharma is thus the great striving. In this case, the Lord himself is the eye, is the knowledge, is the root of all the doctrines.
Okay.
Doctrines is their translation of Dharma. The Lord is omnipotent, is the resort. So they use the word resort instead of the refuge.
Right.
And they use the word omnipotent instead of all knowing and seeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I had.
And they say the Lord himself is the eye, is the knowledge. And Gunabhadra has the Buddha serves as or is the true eye, the true knowledge. So I think that's where she stops, and that's very
Yeah, I think
That-
it's,
So that's where she stops, and then it transitions to the Buddha's response to her. We're at 7:40, so we might as well stop here. And then we'll finish off this part here and then go into section 5, part 3, section 5, the entrance to the way of the one vehicle. As we
so clarifying the final meaning, and then it comes the way of one vehicle in the Wayman book, but
right. Yeah, so see, I think they've mixed it up, because that clarifying the final meaning should have been the title for this part, this section.
yeah.
Uh,
I think I remember you saying something at the beginning of your class that that about a theme like this, right? That
Right.
there was you moved one chapter in front of another or something like
Right,
Right.
yeah, because they have the different, they have 4 chapters instead of 3 parts.
right.
And so they move things around a little.
Cool.
That's different. Here we go, just as a preview. This is section 5, an outline for section 5.
Mm.
And you see, Paul just has the title Ekayana and doesn't break it up into subsections. The text doesn't have subsections, so that's why in these other 2 columns, the subsections are in brackets, because
Right.
they're brackets that I've added and brackets that the Waymans have added. So part 3, I have entrance to the way of the one vehicle. Section 5, articulating the entrance of the one vehicle. They have chapter 3 as clarifying the final meaning. They don't put this entrance to the way of the one vehicle until section 14 at the very end, which seems totally out of place to me. So here's all five have section 5 as, I mean, all 3 translations have section 5 as the one vehicle. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 subdivisions, and Waymans have 1, 2, 4 subdivisions, because I've got 3 subdivisions that they don't include. And so just want to give you that little preview that of how that's going to break out. Any questions or issues raised that we want to deal with before we go?
No, it's good. It's good. You know, as it progresses, I feel like I'm relating more to it. You know, I guess it's a matter of getting accustomed to this kind of stuff. You know, it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it is, you know, it's a sutra that's trying to teach lay people. You know, remember, it all started with Srimala's mother and father learning about the Buddha Dharma and saying, we don't quite get it. Our daughter's going to get it, so let's write her the letter. So really, this whole sutra is a way of answering her parents' question. What is this all about? And so she's laying it out, her insight and her awakening, her prajna jhana, her jhana prajna, about what the Buddha's teaching. And so the whole thing becomes that, to me, I thought that it's very interesting. This whole sutra is really, it's not a sutra per se of the Buddha telling the person in the assembly who's asked the question. It's the Queen Srimala awakening and giving a spontaneous discourse or spontaneous teaching about the one vehicle to the Buddha and the people who are assembled in the retinue that's listening to her. But it's all in the context of this is her response to her parents asking the question, what is this Buddha teaching us? So I like that, to remember that context. That it's not, it's trying to give a language that is not, how should I say it? It's not the endless lists of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, where it's 20 kinds of emptiness and this, that, and the other, but it is trying to address all those points, which I think is the important part. Okie doke. All right, thank you, everyone. If there's anybody has any further question or anything, okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Ciao.